Hello friends, here with a bit of an interesting amp, not something I would normally take on to be totally honest, but here we are trying to help a guy out. This is an acoustic amp, which I've heard the brand before, but I really had no idea what they made. I guess I just always assumed they were solid state amps, and maybe most of them are, but this is a tube amp. It's got four, I believe it was 6L6s in it, and four preamp tubes. Obviously, it's a very old style PCB. Very chaotic, lots of stuff going on. To be totally honest, just looking at it, it is riddled with very poor solder joints that I would not trust one bit. And yeah, just a lot going on. Definitely had some work on it. You can see some replaced resistors. There's some stuff flying in the air here. Just quite a lot to take in. And again, not something I would normally work on just because I have very limited time. And this is probably going to take a good amount of time to really troubleshoot and figure out. But what are the problems? So this is the owner's main amp that he plays. And I guess it's been working fine up until recently, where there's very low output on channel 1. And channel 2 has no output whatsoever. So a bit of an odd set of symptoms there. I did try swapping all of the preamp tubes out with different with a new JJ just to see if that caused anything before I got a chance to find the schematic, because I didn't know the model name of this amp. It actually doesn't have any model name on the chassis anywhere that I can see, but the owner informed me it is called a G100T, I think is what it's called. And it's a 6L6 100 watt amp basically, but also has a 50 watt setting on the back, I believe, one of these switches over here. So yeah, just a very interesting amp that I have never heard of. It is all brown too. I don't know if you can quite tell. The aesthetic is well, it's something. It's got EQ similar to a Mesa. Just very, very odd. So anyways, yeah, I tried swapping the preamp tubes around with the new JJ to see if that did anything. That made no change to either channel. So it's not that. And that's about as far as I got. So we're just kind of, I figured I'd start filming this one. I wasn't originally going to, but this one might be interesting. So that's where we're at. Now I got to find a schematic and see if I can figure out what is what. But yeah, I don't know if you'll be able to really tell, but there's just a lot of very suspect solder joints on this thing everywhere I look, basically. So I'm not surprised it's having problems, but to diagnose what the problem is exactly, it's going to be tricky. This is going to be probably a good learning experience for me, to be honest. So, and obviously, it goes without saying, we got old caps everywhere. Mixture, I'm not sure if any of these were replaced or not. There's a couple different brands going on here. But yeah, let's dive in. All right, so I did a little bit of research, found some schematics. It's interesting, they have the schematics broken out for different sections of the amplifier, which honestly makes it more confusing, but regardless, we do have something to go off of, which is helpful. Did also learn from the schematic that's actually expecting 12AX7s across the board, whereas the owner had a 12AT7 here. So just a little side note for myself there. And yeah, just kind of look through visually at the amplifier. There's so much to take in, like I said already. Immediately, there's some things that stand out, like, I'll zoom in here. This resistor right here looks like it's charred or burnt. Does not look very healthy. Let's see if I can get in the light a little bit better. And yeah, so I thought, well, maybe there's your problem without really knowing or really looking into where it's connected, because it's a bit hard to follow for some of these resistors, but I see red, orange there, and so it should be a 22K, and it measures basically dead on. So I think we'll still replace that because it does not look good, but that may just be a red herring. And then I went ahead and just measured the voltages at every pin of each tube socket. Everything seemed more or less okay. The one that was really confusing to me, this one right here, and the plate was basically 0 volts for pin 1. Pin 6 had 260 volts, which is what I would expect. And then for the grids, basically 0, it's fine. And then pin 3 is the cathode, so that would be to bias the tube, and that was also at 0. So basically the V, we'll call it V2A section, has basically no bias for that side of the tube, and no plate voltage. Yeah, just those are the initial findings. Again, you guys are just following along as I do this in the real world situation, not everything prepared and sorted out perfectly before I go on camera. So with that, let's go ahead and pull out the schematic and see if we can figure out what the heck's going on here. Jumping back to this Acoustic G100T amplifier, I can't remember where I left off last, but I did speak to the owner and we got approval to move forward with a full recap of the amp, which is great. We were able to fix it. We had, as I noted, some missing voltage here on V2, and we were able to kind of narrow it down to this area. And basically what I ended up doing is replacing the resistor here and reinstalling this resistor here, and that seemed to fix it. Now I did want to just kind of zoom in. I switched lenses here just to show like the general quality of the solder joints on this thing, and it's just kind of all over the map. The stock solder joints also show kind of the dangers of working on these vintage amps, these vintage BCB amps. The pads are just so fragile, and the previous person that replaced the resistor that we took out here, in fact, let me grab it real quick. That was there. They destroyed the pad, so there's no pad there, but we were able to get some solder flown inside so that there is a good connection there. But yeah, there's nothing I can do about, you know, a missing pad. So you have to be very careful when working on these, and it's typically a mess when you got to work on it after somebody else has worked on it. But even the stock joints are pretty terrible in a lot of places, to be honest. And there's, I mean, seemingly missing solder all over. I'll show you guys. I'll scoot the amp down a little bit. So you can see right here. Look at that. Don't see any solder there. Lots of joints like that, just kind of all over the place, where it's just haphazard at best. I mean, look at that right there. So yeah, this thing just, it's not a well-built amp by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, if we look further over in this area, it's just a mess. It's a bit of a disaster. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and try and touch up what I can as we wait for parts, but we do have a ton of caps to be replaced here, and should be a decent sized job, but this amp hopefully will be good to go after that. So okay, so I went ahead and just touched up various solder joints I saw that appeared missing or no connection, at least on the top of the PCB here. So that already looks much better and should be more secure. I'm sure I'm going to find more as I go along, just because there's so many on this thing. But we're off to a good start. So we're just going to go ahead and wait for the parts to arrive, which should be any day now. And then we'll yeah, go through the hassle of removing all of the caps. There's plenty of solder joints I found too, tied to caps that are not actually connected. You can see right here, if I zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to do this one, and I'll do this one at the same time. You can see there's no solder there at all, which is crazy. Same thing over here, if you can see that. So yeah, this thing is just kind of a mess, but I'm sure it sounds good. Clean builds are not always indicative of great tone, so, or vice versa. So we'll touch base once we get the parts in, but pretty happy so far. We got parts, lots and lots of caps here to swap in. So let's get to it. We'll probably start with the smaller, more intricate ones first, and move our way over to the bigger caps. So let's go. All right, that looks like all of the small caps done. No real problems there, just a bit finicky and hard to reach stuff. I know there's going to be lots of little leads to pick up. We'll find those and blow all that out with some air. But yeah, everything looks pretty good, so we can go ahead and move on. So I got the old cap removed here, and you can see it's got this kind of silicone stuff or whatever it is. But it's actually over a resistor here and a cap here. So I'm just going to leave it because the cap fits just fine in between. It's not going to go anywhere. So it's not really necessary So we're just going to leave that as is and get this new, much better MOD cap in here. It should fit perfectly. Got a little bit of silicone on the bottom. That should be fine. One thing I've learned, especially with amps like this, is it's very easy to make things much worse by trying to make them better. You know, trying to remove some of that old gunk could damage the pads or the components that are there. So it just doesn't really make sense. Better to just leave it. All right, so this side of the board is completely done now. So now we've got another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more to go. Yeah, these are gonna be a problem. Dang it. Pad's wanting to lift up here. I gotta be really careful how I do this. So what I want to do now is try and figure out what this is going to. I don't see a 16 microfarad 500 volt cap anywhere in the schematic. So this is a factory piece, but just doesn't match the schematic for whatever reason. And I don't know where this is going. So I'm going to try and do a continuity test, find out where it's going in case I have to do a jumper, because the pad is starting to lift up, which there's really nothing I can do about it. These are just absolutely terrible quality PCB amplifiers. And the problem is because the cap is glued to the board, when I'm trying to lift the lead out of the hole it's in, it's coming out at a slight angle, which is catching the pad. And so it's just, and they're so weak that they just kind of lift up right away. So we got all of these without any problems. Of course, this one has got problems. So yeah, we got to figure out where this is going. So I'm not sure. I have no idea, but we're gonna poke around and see if we can find it. All right, so we got continuity to this wire over here. That's like partially stripped. Now I gotta try and figure out where the heck it's going. So it's going to this wire right here, which is going to a transformer. I think it might be a choke. So let me, I'm gonna have to flip the amp over to get a better look on the underside, but I think that's what it's doing. Yep, that's what it appears to be, a choke here. You can see one end of the choke is going to whatever this little network is over here. The other end is going here, which I guess has a wire, or rather a trace under the board that's going from here to here. So that's okay. We can always just run a wire over here. That's not the end of the world. But yeah, let me just try and find on the schematic now that I know it's connected to the choke. See if I can find the choke on here and figure it out from there. Okay, I think I figured it out. So we've got in the schematic here, you see this is the power transformer. And then we've got the rectifier here, the bridge rectifier, which is right there. We've got the two 100 microfarad 300 volt caps, which are these two. You've got this 0.01, which is right here. You can see LI, that would be the choke. And you can see the standby switch is connected here. Those are these white wires right here connected to the standby switch right here on the front panel. So that would point to this cap right here being a 20 microfarad 500 volts. This is a 16 microfarad. So that's most likely what it is. In fact, I'm positive that's what it is. So for whatever reason, they just didn't use a 20 microfarad cap. So yeah, we just need to make sure that is connected to the choke, which is not a big deal at all. So feeling better about that, but let's see if we can still salvage it in the pad as is. But at least now we know we have an option if or a backup plan. So I'm going to snip the leads so that I can try and pull them up straight, and also so I can get this cap out of here. So basically, I just want to try and pull up as perfectly straight as possible, which it can still catch, because if you guys saw the first big cap I pulled out, you can see they had the leads bent, so they were catching on the underside, which could have easily lifted the pad as well. So we don't know what it looks like on the underside. Probably not great, but this gives us our best chance, at least, of not ripping the pad out. All right, here we go. Yeah, this is the same problem. So I think it is cut. Look at that. The pad just came right off on my soldering iron. So same problem here. The wire underneath has to be bent over to the side because even though I'm pulling straight up, it's not coming out straight. Well, that's frustrating, but we must continue on. There's nothing else we can really do. There we go. All it took is that little bend to completely throw everything out of whack. This one I think is pretty salvageable still. This one I'm not sure. But we'll try to do the same thing. I'm going to try and hold the pad down with the tip of the soldering iron as well. I'm going to push the wire down first. Get it to move. Yeah, this whole one's just lifting out. There it goes. See, this one had a bit of a Z to it. Man, we did so good up to this point. Well, there's evidence of pads already being gone from previous work done. So it's not like that's completely out of the realm of possibilities. You can see this pad was missing when we were working on it before. There's another spot too. I might have touched it up already. Oh, right here. So when they replaced this rectifier, there's no pad on top, but there is still metal contact on the inside. So it can still work fine, just not ideal. Bummer. Moving on. Perfect. Okay. So it's not as pretty as everything else, but completely functional. Like I said, there's metal inside the hole. Just the very top part of the pad is gone, which again, nothing I can do about that. But as long as it is still functionally connected from here to here, which it is, we're totally fine. So perfect. Let's move on. I think what I'm going to try is removing as much solder as possible first and see if that helps. Look at this garbage. Just they put little Z's in it, and then look, I got the pad right on the just popped right off. Unbelievable. Gosh, it's so freaking annoying. Well, again, there's nothing I could do about that. That one didn't have a hook in it, so it survived just fine. This is an extremely tight maneuver here. Try and get this without burning any wires and not move the pad. All right, I think we salvaged it. Let's just confirm continuity. It should be going to that resistor there. That's good. And then this side should be connected to the other side of the other cap. And then these two sides should be connected. Positive on one side, negative on the other, and they are. And then this side should be connected to the other resistor right here. And it is. Okay, so everything checks out. That's the struggle of these sort of amps and why most techs will charge more working on old PCB amps like this, because they are just frankly not really designed to be repaired. The pads are so poor that even if you do everything by the textbook, even if you got years of experience, there's a high probability of a pad lifting despite your best efforts. So, and to be clear, I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I am saying that I think I did a pretty good job and still ended up with a couple of pads lifting. So we've got more to do, but the smaller lead, smaller caps are going to be easier. It's the bigger leads of the bigger caps that catches the pad. So I don't think we'll have any trouble with these ones here, except for maybe this cap. So I'm going to take a quick break and then we'll come back to it. All right, the pain continues with this amp. We got all of the caps here replaced, but not without our struggles. We had a pad just completely say see you later here, and then the pad here as well. I tried to be very, very careful. I tried removing all the solder. There's just nothing you can do with some of these. You just look at them wrong and they'll lift. But we did get everything in there and everything tested with the continuity test on the multimeter. Okay, so we're good to go there. No big problems. I don't know what's going on with this diode reaching all over here. Amp worked fine before. with it. Obviously, this was added later by somebody. So we're just going to leave it because it's functioning, and yeah, not perfect, but basically none of this amp is perfect in the first place. So we're not going to sweat those little details. Anyways, the last two left now are to replace the can cap here, which I'm not sure if you guys can see from your angle. And that is two 40 microfarad, 500 volts. So we're going to have discrete caps to replace that. I just got to figure out how to mount them in this little window over here. So I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to show on camera, but let's get to the work. All right, so I've got it all installed here. It took some creativity. I ended up getting a 4-terminal strip here, cut off one end so I could get it to fit, and then just connected it to one of the existing bolts there with the lock nut. So we've got the ground, shared ground between both the 40 microfarad caps stacked on top of each other, and then we've got the wires, you can see, that are coming from here off the board. And then we've got the balancing resistor. I just kept this here and replaced it with a high quality Vichy power metal film to go between the two. And yeah, I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. So a lot going on, all siliconed as well, but this should be good to go for a very, very long time. Tough to get a replacement for something like that. So sometimes you got to be creative, but overall, very happy with how everything came out. This thing was a absolute beast. Probably the hardest amp I've ever recapped, to be honest, and probably the most caps too. I'm trying to think. And we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 caps, I think, in this thing. So, whew, quite a lot. All right, so now we just got to fire it up, make sure she's happy, and should be good to go. All right, my daughter is losing her mind in the background. That's okay. We're continuing on doing our testing real quick. We got it biased right around 60%. You can see here. And now let's go ahead and here we're in the clean channel, or channel 1. Super loud. Let's master all the way up, and the volume right around 3 or 4. Very, very loud, clean on that channel. Let's go ahead and switch over to the dirty channel. It's a much warmer channel, much more mid-forward. Let's get a little bit more treble in there. All right, sounds great, actually. This thing sounds really good. It's pretty unique, but yeah, just a pain to work on, but you know what? We got it done. So very happy with this, and I hope the owner gets to enjoy this for a very, very long time.